Laughing Cavalier here, presenting to you another tale of these troubled times. And yeah, they're pretty troubled today. We're having a heat wave in the UK at the moment. So I decided to do something a bit different, and that's a completely unscripted video. You see, I've been watching The White Princess, which it's not as bad as The Spanish Princess, but it's still pretty bad, to the point I think I'm going to be rushing Tudor Part 3 into production. But in the course of my research, I came across this rather old article from 2013 about writer Emma Frost, who wrote The Spanish Princess and White Princess, as well as The White Queen, which is what this article is about. The article in question is titled, The White Queen, writer Emma Frost on sex, historical accuracy, and making the real Game of Thrones. So, and badly, I'm sure. So I'm not going to be reading the whole thing, but just these particular bits that kind of annoyed me. Question. I wanted to first ask you about the language, because I know you've worked on contemporary fare like Shameless, that very well-known period drama, Shameless, previous to this. How do you go about having language that evokes the period without sounding ridiculous? So our answer. If I simply researched it myself, and I was writing a show straight from the history, then this would be a totally different conversation. Philippa did tons of research, and she's a historian. Sorry. I had a relationship with her novels, so what I feel is that the novels I read, it doesn't matter to me whether they're based on history or they're complete invention. Yeah, it kind of shows in The Spanish Princess. I had to bring those to screen, retaining as much as I can so that the fans who reach for those books love the show, and we're retaining the qualities that made the book so popular. So I take my lead on language from Philippa's books. Okay, so far it's not too controversial, but we're going to be getting there now. When we discussed it, there were other ways to go with the language, and ways it might have been if we were in school. Oh, is this absolutely accurate? But it would have sounded less immediate and harder to understand. So there is an immediacy to the language, and there is a modernity to the language. But the truth is, if we're being absolutely period correct, they'd be speaking Middle English, and nobody would understand a bloody word anybody is saying. So you can't be accurate, because if you're accurate, no show really, and no one would watch, except for one scholar. And I promise, I don't think anybody is saying with these productions that the language has to be in Middle English. They're saying it kind of has to sound decent. Sound like something people from this time period, like educated people would say. Like, for example, I use the example in Tudor Part 2 of Elizabeth R. with what Elizabeth is saying. People are not saying they have to be speaking stuff you can't understand, but that's not really what pissed me off, though. It's a bit further down. Question. On that note, how important was it in the production to think about period accuracy in terms of details? I saw that a few of the reviews in the UK, where the series is currently airing on BBC One, brought that up. I should just mention this is about the White Queen, which is a couple of seasons before Spanish Princess. But Emma Frost answers, first of all, it's a drama. We're not making a documentary. It's no history lesson. We're not there wagging our finger. The truth would be they'd all have rotten teeth, they'd all be filthy and covered in lice and itching all the time. Do you want to watch that show? I don't think so. Also, the male and female courts were entirely separate in the daytime. Men and women only came together privately, even at dinners. They sat at different tables. How do you write that show? I don't know how to write that show. Well, you could easily have done it. I think dramas in the past have done so, but there we go. And here we come to the bit that really peeved me off. There is this obsession people have with historical accuracy. And I think what I would say to this is, first of all, the history that we have is not what happened. It's what got written down. And what got written down is largely about men's lives, and what got written down is filtered through the lens of the particular prejudices of the person who wrote it down. So every historian throughout history has been influenced by the king at the time, all the politicians at the time, and they're trying to please the people that they're writing the history. I mean, so far, she's not technically wrong here. I mean, you can argue this with, the Tudor perception of someone like, say, Richard III, how it's, Shakespeare portrayed him as a villain, where we now think it's perhaps propaganda. But then she goes on to say, there is no such thing as historical truth. Every single version of history says more about the era that history books are written than it does about the history itself. Okay, the problem is just because something is biased by whatever the source is, that doesn't just give you excuse to ignore it and just make something up that isn't accurate at all. There has to be some sort of grounding in it. Although then she goes on to say, what you do is you go to the source and you make creative choices based on what you think will be a show that people want to watch. That will be keeping in tone with the books. Just solve the history because that's all biased now, apparently. Designers make choices, and actors make choices, and costume designers make choices, and so on. Some of what people have said is complete nonsense. They have this obsession with saying there are zips in the costumes. There's not one zip in any costumes. There are hooks and eyes which come from the Iron Age, which is absolutely period correct. I just want you to take that in for a moment. So, the Iron Age, before the Romans, then the Tudors, late 15th century. Would you say that's period correct? I don't think so. No. Then the interviewer continues. The underlying dynastic clashing houses reasons for this war are pretty removed from any modern day concern. How do you go about threading that into these more understandable dramas concerning children, self-preservation, and love? And then she answers, well, it's a civil war. And I think civil war is something we can understand. Yeah, it's true. I mean, every time I go out my house, I just get attacked by parliamentarians all the time. And it's gang... And it's gang warfare. Because, the War of the Roses, it was like they were all like in hoodies with knives and things. That's how it was. And most of the characters are incredibly young, and their life expectancy was incredibly short. Yeah, so I'm going to stop reading the article there, but do you see what we're dealing with when it comes with these writers of these period dramas? They literally just state they don't care about history because they just think it's inconvenient. Like, oh, well, it's biased, so therefore we're just going to ignore it and completely make up something. What happened to writing of period dramas? Did they just all go to the same... Actually, I think they must have gone to the same acting school. I mean, she keeps saying immediacy all the time. I think that was the costume designer of the American Winter Scots movie, kept using terms like that. And what was her name? Laurie McCarthy. What was it? We use a certain amount of latitude with our historical accuracy. Anyway, sorry, it's completely just an on-the-cuff thing I wanted to do. As I said, Tudor Rant Part 3 will probably be on the way at some point. I know people want Waterloo Part 2 out. That will come soon, I assure you. Anyway, so this has been the Laughing Cavalier, wishing you a good day.